Imagine this. You are standing in an endless, echoing hall. Before you, stretching into the haze of antiquity, is a single, unbroken line of people. These are your ancestors. Look closely. See the farmer with soil permanently etched into the lines of his hands, his gaze fixed on the horizon, praying for rain. See the woman who survived famine, her eyes holding a quiet resilience that feels as solid as bedrock. Further back, a soldier, his armor dented, his spirit unyielding. A scholar, a builder, a refugee, a survivor. Each one a link in a chain of flesh and blood, a testament to endurance. They faced plagues, wars, and unspeakable hardship, and their victory was simple. They lived. They passed the fire of life from their hands to the next, a sacred, desperate relay race through time. And at the very end of this monumental procession, there is you. The cumulative hopes, fears, and sacrifices of 1,000 generations flow through your veins. Their legacy is the very breath in your lungs. You are their final, triumphant masterpiece. They toiled so that you might have peace. They starved so that you might have plenty. They fought so that you might have safety. The unspoken covenant between you and them is one of gratitude. Live a good life. Be honorable. Be stable. Be a worthy, respectable final link in this great chain. Honor their struggle by finding the comfort they never could. But as you stand there, bathed in the reverent silence of their collective gaze, a strange and terrible thought enters your mind. It's a whisper at first, a discordant note in the hallowed symphony of your heritage. What if their dream for you is too small? What if the good life they envisioned, the life of stability, of community respect, of quiet contentment, is not a reward, but a gilded cage? It's a beautifully crafted prison built from the bricks of their love and the mortar of their sacrifice. They built you a harbor, a safe place to anchor your life, shielded from the storms that wrecked their own. Yet, you look out at the raging, chaotic sea, and you don't feel fear. You feel an agonizing, inexplicable pull. The whisper grows louder. It asks a question that feels like a betrayal. Is the purpose of a ship to remain safe in the harbor, or is it to conquer the storm? This is the great, silent paradox of the human spirit. You are torn between two sacred duties. The duty to honor the past, to be the grateful inheritor, the stable steward of your bloodline's legacy, and the duty to honor a different, more dangerous calling within yourself, the primal urge to transcend, to shatter expectations, to become something so radically different that your own ancestors wouldn't recognize you. The world teaches you to be a good man, a good woman. It praises conformity, rewards reliability, and celebrates humility. But history does not remember the good. It remembers the great. It remembers the ones who were willing to be feared, to be misunderstood, to be called heretics and monsters in their own time. It remembers the ones who saw the chain of legacy not as something to be polished, but as a shackle to be broken. Who taught you that your ambition was a sin? When did you learn to conflate greatness with arrogance and contentment with virtue? Was it from the same systems of morality designed to keep the powerful in place and the obedient in line? Was it a lesson taught to you by those who feared what you might become if you ever stopped asking for permission? You feel the weight of their eyes, the thousands of pairs of eyes from your past. Are they watching with hope or with judgment? Do they want you to validate their struggle by living a simple life, or do they secretly, desperately want you to render their struggles obsolete by achieving a level of power and freedom they could never have imagined? This is not a choice between being good or being evil. It is a choice between two entirely different realities, governed by two different sets of laws. One is the path of the accepted man, who lives and dies respected by his peers, his name a fading inscription on a local gravestone. The other is the path of the consequential man, who may live and die reviled, but whose actions reshape the world, his name carved into the very architecture of history. You feel it now, don't you? The terrifying, electrifying realization that the most profound act of love for your bloodline might be to become the very thing they taught you to fear. The question, then, is not what you owe them. The question is what you owe the monstrous, brilliant potential that sleeps within you. Are you here to be the final, perfected link in a chain of predictable men, or are you here to be the blacksmith who shatters that chain and forges a crown from its molten pieces? The answer to that question lies buried beneath a mountain of lies we have been told about power, morality, and our own nature. And the first step to finding it is to understand the hidden problem, the invisible force that has been quietly shaping your destiny from the moment you were born. That feeling, the terrifying, exhilarating choice between the harbor and the storm, is not a flaw in your character. It is not a simple dilemma to be solved with a pro and con list. It is the symptom of a profound, invisible war being waged within your very soul. The hidden problem you must confront is not an external barrier, but a psychological operating system installed in you at birth. An ancient code, passed down not through genes, but through culture, language, and the loving, cautionary whispers of your ancestors. This system has a name. Philosophers have called it many things, but Friedrich Nietzsche gave it its most piercing and uncomfortable title: slave morality. To understand this, you must first understand its opposite. In the ancient world, the noble, the chieftain, the conqueror, the master type defined good as a reflection of himself. Goodness was strength, pride, courage, ambition, and the unyielding will to power. It was the affirmation of life in its most potent, dangerous, and aristocratic form. Bad was simply everything that was weak, timid, common, or pitiful. The master's morality was a triumphant yes to his own instincts. But the vast majority of humanity, the herd, the oppressed, the weak, could not compete on these terms. So, to survive, they performed a stunning act of psychological alchemy, a transvaluation of values. They took everything the master valued and declared it evil. Pride became a sin, ambition became greed, strength became tyranny. Conversely, they took the conditions of their own powerlessness and declared them virtuous. Meekness became humility. Weakness became goodness. The inability to take revenge became forgiveness. Submission to their fate became obedience. This, Nietzsche argues, is the morality that has dominated Western civilization for 2,000 years. It is a morality born of resentment, a clever spiritual revenge of the powerless against the powerful. It is the morality of the herd, designed to domesticate the strong, to shear the lions and turn them into sheep, all for the sake of collective safety and predictability. This is the psychological architecture you have inherited. It is the water you swim in, so pervasive you don't even notice its current. It is the voice of your ancestors, the voice of your teachers, the voice of society, and now it is the voice of your own conscience. It tells you to be humble, to put others first, to not make waves, to shrink your ambition so it doesn't inconvenience others. It celebrates the team player and quietly fears the revolutionary. It is a system designed to create good neighbors, reliable employees, and stable citizens. But it is fundamentally, violently opposed to the creation of the great individual. This internal conflict is what the psychologist Carl Jung identified as the struggle with the shadow. Your shadow contains all the parts of yourself that you have been taught to repress and deny in order to be good and acceptable. Your raw ambition, your hunger for power, your capacity for ruthlessness, your divine discontent, all of it was relegated to the dark basement of your psyche. You were taught to be ashamed of these impulses. But Jung knew that wholeness is not achieved by killing the monster within you, but by integrating it. True strength doesn't come from pretending the darkness isn't there. It comes from confronting it, harnessing its immense energy, and placing it in service of your highest aims. The man who has not integrated his shadow is a mere child, a harmless creature at the mercy of the world. The man who has integrated it is a force of nature, capable of both creation and destruction, and he alone has the power to choose. The herd fears this man because he is no longer controllable. He has tamed the dragon they pretend does not exist. Your ancestors, in their desperate struggle for survival, had no choice but to suppress their own shadows. They couldn't afford grand ambitions. They needed to focus on the next harvest, the next winter. They sublimated their will to power into a will to endure. And they passed that survival strategy on to you, not as a choice, but as a sacred moral commandment. To break from this is to commit a kind of psychological patricide. This is the very essence of what the existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith, a form of self-deception where you pretend you are not free. It's the act of telling yourself, I have no choice, I must be a responsible son, or I must follow this safe career path. These are lies you tell yourself to escape the terrifying, vertigo-inducing reality of your absolute freedom. It is far easier to see yourself as a product of your past, a mere link in a chain, than to face the crushing responsibility that comes with knowing you are an utterly unique consciousness with the power to define your own values and forge your own destiny from nothing. To remain a good man within the confines of your inherited morality is the ultimate act of bad faith. It is to choose the comfort of the prison over the terror of the open sky. So you feel it now, the subtle self-sabotage when you get too close to a goal, the whisper of guilt when you dare to put your own grand project before the mundane needs of others. This is your psychological programming at work. It is the slave morality acting as a warden, ensuring you never stray too far from the herd. It's an invisible fence, and every time you press against it, it delivers a jolt of guilt, shame, and fear. It is the hidden problem, and its consequences are not merely philosophical. They are devastatingly real, shaping a life of quiet desperation when a life of resounding greatness is calling your name. This inherited operating system, this slave morality, is not a benign philosophical abstraction. It is a relentless, active saboteur, and its consequences ripple through every facet of your existence, silently shaping your reality into a pale imitation of what it could be. It is the architect of the unlived life. Its work is so subtle, so deeply woven into the fabric of your perception, that you mistake its prison walls for the boundaries of the universe. Consider the neurological reality of this trap. Your brain is a pattern-matching machine, hardwired with a powerful confirmation bias. Having internalized the belief that humility is good and ambition is dangerous, your mind now actively scans the world for evidence to support this claim. You read about the spectacular fall of a brazen CEO, and your internal system whispers, "See, pride comes before a fall." You see a modest, hard-working man retire with a small pension and a happy family, and the system confirms that is a successful life. Safe, honorable. You conveniently ignore the thousands of counterexamples, the titans of industry, science, and art whose relentless, unapologetic ambition dragged humanity forward. Your reality is a curated feed of evidence, edited by a deeply biased algorithm whose sole purpose is to keep you small because small is safe. This internal bias is reinforced by an external one, a social phenomenon colloquially known as the crabs in a bucket mentality. When one crab begins to climb towards freedom, the others will instinctively reach up and pull it back down into the collective misery. This is a perfect metaphor for human social dynamics governed by slave morality. The moment you begin to achieve something extraordinary, you will feel the subtle pulls of your peers. It may come disguised as concern. Are you working too hard? As a joke. Who do you think you are? Or as passive aggression. They do this not because they are evil, but because your ascent is a glaring indictment of their own stagnation. Your light illuminates the bars of their own cages, and that is an uncomfortable truth. To protect the fragile peace of the herd, they must pull you back down. The most insidious part? You have internalized this behavior. You are both the aspiring crab and the mob pulling it back down. Every time you self-deprecate after a victory, every time you downplay your ambitions to make others feel comfortable, you are doing the herd's work for it. Your ancient brain, terrified of social ostracism, a primal fear equivalent to death, willingly participates in its own containment. This neurological and social conditioning creates a powerful status quo bias. For your ancestors, drastic change was the greatest threat. A new tribe, a failed crop, a sudden drought. These were existential risks. Survival depended on predictability. You have inherited this deep cellular preference for the known over the unknown. But the world has changed. The wilderness of survival has been replaced by a civilization that rewards, above all else, disruption, innovation, and radical change. Your ancestral programming, once a brilliant survival strategy, is now a ball and chain. It makes you cling to the stable job you hate, the relationship that drains you, the life that no longer fits you, all because the terror of the unknown feels greater than the slow, grinding misery of the known. Greatness is, by definition, a deviation from the status quo. To even attempt it requires fighting against the very wiring of your brain. Look at the culture this system has produced. Our myths and stories are saturated with this morality. We celebrate the reluctant hero, the Cincinnatus who wants only to return to his farm, the humble chosen one who has greatness thrust upon him. We are suspicious of the one who actively seeks it, the one who declares, "I will be king." That character is almost always the villain. We are taught, through 1,000 subtle narratives, that wanting power is a moral failing, the desire to build an empire, to leave a permanent mark on the world, to be the greatest your bloodline has ever seen. This desire is framed as a dangerous ego trip. This cultural conditioning is a form of mass hypnosis, programming you to feel ashamed of the very instinct that creates legends. It has seeded your language with weapons of diminishment. He has an ego. She's too ambitious. These are not observations. They are verbal tranquilizer darts, meant to sedate any member of the herd who dares to dream beyond the pasture fence. And what is the ultimate consequence of this lifelong indoctrination? It is not a dramatic, fiery crash. It is a slow, silent, and far more tragic death. It is the death of potential. It is the brilliant book that remains a collection of notes. The revolutionary company that remains a daydream on a commute. The epic life that is traded for a comfortable one. It is the gnawing, ever-present feeling, in the quiet moments of your life, that you were meant for more. It's the ghost of the person you could have become, who haunts you not with accusations, but with the deafening silence of what might have been. This is the true horror of the unseen trap. It doesn't kill you with violence. It kills you with comfort. It convinces the lion to live and die as a sheep. And the most damnable part is that the lion eventually comes to believe the wool is its own. You now see the architecture of the prison. You can trace the origins of the slave morality. You can feel its effects in your cognitive biases, and you can see it reflected in the culture around you. You understand the trap. But understanding is not escape. A prisoner who can merely describe his chains in exquisite detail is still a prisoner. The critical moment is here. The realization is dawning that every rule you've been taught to follow was designed to prevent the very thing you now seek. So, the question transforms. It is no longer, why do I feel this way? It is now, how do I begin the insurrection? The insurrection begins not with a roar, but with a quiet, deliberate, and deeply heretical decision. It is the decision to judge the world and yourself by an entirely new standard. You must abandon the moral framework of the herd and adopt the terrifying, liberating calculus of the prince. The rebellion begins the moment you stop asking, "Is this what a good person would do?" and start asking, is this what an effective person would do? This is the core of the Machiavellian revolution. It is a radical shift from a morality of intention to a morality of consequence. The world does not reward you for your noble intentions. It rewards you for your results. The universe is utterly indifferent to your inner turmoil, your guilt, or your desire to be liked. It responds only to leverage, to force, and to will. This is where you must understand the distinction between conventional virtue and what Machiavelli called virtue. Virtue, as your inherited morality defines it, is passive. It is being humble, kind, and obedient. Virtue is active, dynamic, and dangerous. It is the constellation of qualities the sovereign individual uses to impose his will upon reality. Ambition, skill, courage, strategic cunning, and, when necessary, a capacity for ruthless action. Your ancestors survived by adapting to their circumstances. You will only become great by forcing circumstances to adapt to you. The passive object of fortune must die, so the active agent of virtue can be born. This rebellion requires you to perform a series of radical inversions. First, you must confront your shadow not as a monster to be slain, but as a beast to be tamed and ridden. That dark energy you've been taught to repress, your raw ambition, your discontent with the status quo, your hunger for significance, is the very source of your power. The herd wants you to feel shame for these impulses because they are a threat to its stability. But your rebellion demands that you see them as your greatest asset. Stop apologizing for your ambition. Stop seeing your discontent as a character flaw. Recognize it as a sign that you were meant for more than your current reality. Your shadow is the wild, untamed horsepower of your soul. To deny it is to sentence yourself to a life of walking. To integrate it is to mount a war horse and charge toward your destiny. Second, you must learn to embrace a form of strategic cruelty aimed squarely at your weaker self. The slave morality has taught you to be pathologically kind, especially to your own limitations. You make excuses for your procrastination. You coddle your fears. You rationalize your inaction. This must end. The part of you that chooses comfort over progress, that seeks distraction over discipline, is the internal agent of the herd. It is the prison guard within. You must become ruthless with this entity. When it whispers that you are tired, you will work an extra hour. When it begs for the safety of the known, you will take a calculated leap into the unknown. You must become your own demanding, unforgiving master before you can ever hope to master your fate. This is not self-hatred. It is the highest form of self-love, the willingness to prune the weaker branches so the mighty tree can grow. This path leads to the most liberating and dangerous realization of all, the one articulated by Nietzsche. You must move beyond good and evil. This does not mean becoming a nihilist or a villain. It means recognizing that the good and evil of the herd are not objective truths. They are tools of social control. The rebellion requires you to become your own lawgiver, to create your own table of values based on a single principle. Does this serve my ultimate aim? Under this new law, sleeping in might be a greater sin than offending a colleague. Wasting an evening on mindless entertainment might be more evil than being called selfish for focusing on your work. The applause of the crowd becomes irrelevant. The only judgment that matters is whether you are moving closer to the full realization of your potential. A lion, in its pursuit of its nature, does not pause to consider the moral opinions of the sheep. To them, its very existence is an act of terror. So be it. Look to history. The great figures were not good men by the herd's definition. Caesar was not humble when he crossed the Rubicon. Napoleon was not considerate of the old European order. They were men possessed of an earth-shaking virtue, men who defined their own morality through the sheer force of their will. You must begin to do the same on your own scale. The rebellion starts now with concrete actions. First, conduct a ruthless audit of your values. For every belief you hold, I should be more available for my family, I should take a safer path, ask yourself, cui bono? Who benefits from this belief? Does it benefit the realization of your greatest self, or does it benefit the comfort of others and the preservation of your cage? Discard every value that does not empower you. Second, you must actively seek discomfort. Your fear is a compass. Whatever you are most afraid of doing, making that phone call, launching that project, having that difficult conversation, is almost certainly the very thing you must do next. Each step into fear weakens the old programming. Finally, you must seize control of your information diet. Stop consuming the cultural tranquilizers that celebrate mediocrity. Immerse yourself in the biographies of conquerors, the philosophies of power, and the stories of those who remade the world in their own image. You must overwrite the slave's code with the code of the master. You are now armed. You have the philosophy of Machiavelli, the psychology of Jung, and the transmoral courage of Nietzsche. You have the strategy to begin your insurrection. You are beginning to feel the chains loosen, to sense the immense, terrifying power that comes with radical self-responsibility. But breaking free is only the beginning of the journey. The rebellion smashes the prison walls, but for what purpose? What ultimate truth lies on the other side of this war? A truth so profound it redefines the very nature of the freedom you have just fought so hard to win. And so, the insurrection succeeds. The walls of the psychological prison lie in rubble around you. You have faced your shadow and harnessed its power. You have silenced the whispers of the herd with the thunder of your own will. You stand now under an open sky, free from the inherited chains of good and evil, armed with the ruthless pragmatism of a prince. You have seized the power to shape your own destiny. For a moment, this victory is intoxicating. The world appears as it truly is, a malleable substance, ready to be molded by a strong enough hand. The initial impulse, born from the fire of your rebellion, is one of conquest, to dominate, to win, to climb so high that you can finally look down upon the pastures of the herd and have your greatness validated by the sheer altitude of your ascent. But as you stand in this cold, rarefied air of absolute freedom, a new, more profound silence descends. The roar of the battle fades, and you are left with its echo. You have become the master, but the question that was once a whisper now becomes a scream. Master of what? And for what purpose? To simply invert the old dynamic, to become the master where you were once the slave, is to remain eternally chained to the very system you sought to destroy. It is to define yourself by the thing you fought against, a prisoner still, pacing the borders of his old cell. This feeling, this hollow vertigo at the pinnacle of power, is the final gate, and passing through it reveals the ultimate truth. The rebellion was never truly about power. Power was merely the key. The ultimate purpose of breaking free from the herd is not to rule over it, but to create a new world that the herd cannot even imagine. The final, most powerful realization is this: your greatness will not be measured by what you controlled, but by what you created. The Machiavellian prince was a necessary, brutal stage of your becoming, the tool to clear the ground and seize your territory. But the final form you are meant to take is that of the creator, the philosopher king, the Übermensch. This being does not simply win the game. He invents an entirely new one, with new values and new horizons. His will to power is not a will to dominate others, but a will to overcome the ultimate adversary, meaninglessness itself. As the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl discovered in the crucible of the concentration camps, the most fundamental human drive is not the pursuit of pleasure or even power, but the pursuit of meaning. The slave morality you escaped offered you a pre-packaged, second-hand meaning. Be a good, stable link in the chain, find comfort, and survive. It was a shelter from the existential void. Your rebellion has torn that shelter down. You are now gloriously, terrifyingly exposed to the infinite. And your final, greatest task is to justify your freedom by filling that void with a purpose of your own choosing. A purpose so vast and compelling that it organizes your every action, disciplines your every thought, and turns your newfound power into a creative, world-altering force. This is where the idea of your bloodline undergoes its final, stunning transformation. The quest to become the greatest your genetic bloodline has ever seen was the catalyst, the spark that ignited the rebellion. It was a noble, but limited ambition. The ultimate truth is that your real lineage is not of blood, but of spirit. By breaking your chains, you have earned the right to stand in a different procession. You now stand in the line of the fire-bringers, the rule-breakers, the paradigm shifters. Your ancestors are no longer just the farmer and the soldier, but Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius, Leonardo da Vinci and Friedrich Nietzsche. Your duty is no longer to the past, but to a future that only you can build. To be the greatest is to make a contribution so significant that you earn your place in this immortal bloodline of the mind. The war is over. The frantic energy of rebellion softens into the calm, focused intensity of the master artist before a blank canvas. The need to prove yourself to others has evaporated, for you are no longer playing to an audience. You are engaged in a sacred dialogue with your own deepest potential. Your power has transformed from a power over to a power to. The power to build the company, to write the book, to make the discovery, to lead the movement. The power to manifest the unique vision that only you possess. You are no longer shattering the links of the old chain in anger. You are now calmly gathering the pieces, taking them to the forge of your will, and crafting not a crown of domination, but a key that will unlock a door for humanity, a door leading to a room that no one knew existed. Look at your life, the struggles, the discontent, the ambition you were taught to see as a curse. It was all a calling. It was the summons to this very moment. You have walked through the fire of rebellion and emerged on the other side, not as a tyrant, but as an architect of the future. The final question is no longer, can I be great? You have already answered that. The question that will define the rest of your days, the question that will echo in eternity, is now. What will you create?